coastline was a great defence against its enemies during World War II. But many years before, some claim a young Adolf Hitler spent time living just down the coast in Liverpool. It's an unlikely tale, but one that just won't go away. Paul McGann's been back to his hometown to find out more.
They do love a good tale in the city of Liverpool. Often the taller the better. When I was a kid, they sighted leprechauns in the park opposite where we lived. Or there's a story about John Lennon went to the crossroads in Mossleel and met the devil. But there's one tale that tops everything. It's that Adolf Hitler used to walk this street. His brother definitely did.
Alois Hitler was actually Adolf's elder half-brother. They had the same father, but different mothers. In 1909, Alois travelled from Austria to Ireland, where he fell in love with 17-year-old Bridget Dowling. They ran away to London, got married, and then settled in Liverpool, where their only son was born. This is William Patrick Hitler's birth certificate, registered in Liverpool in 1911. It shows the family are living in a rented flat.
That flat was in Upper Stanhope Street in Toxteth.
It was a typical Liverpool terrace. They lived in number 102, which was on the corner of Berkeley Street. But I soon discovered the flat where the young Hitler family lived no longer exists.
Obviously the street, as they would have known, it's long gone. Ironically, much of it destroyed by German bombers. But the story goes the man who sent those bombers lived just about here for 5 months as a young man.
The claim that Adolf Hitler came to Liverpool from November 1912 to April 1913 appears in memoirs written by his sister-in-law, Bridget. The memoirs are written in the 1940s, but only came to light 30 years later.
This was just sort of manna from heaven. We just thought this was, and indeed everybody else thought it was unbelievable.
The man who broke the story back in 1973 was Mike Unger, then deputy editor of the Liverpool Daily Post. It's a story which has stayed with him ever since, and he's now published a new version of the memoirs.
Mike, why are you so fascinated by this story?
I think initially because it was a great story, and still is a great story.
When were you convinced that it was probably true?
I think the research that was done over the last few years may convince me that it was true. I didn't know whether it was true or not when we first published it, to be honest. But it's a bit like jigsaw identification. Bits and pieces came into being that you think, yeah, this has to be true.
Why? Why would he want to come?
Well, because he didn't want to be called up into the Austrian army. He was fleeing the draft.
So there was a compulsory
national service, yeah. Clearly the Austrian officials were getting closer to him, and he decided to get out.
Mike has yet to hear a convincing argument against Bridget's claims.
There is no public record saying that Adolf Hitler lived in Liverpool, but all the circumstantial evidence, both from public figures, from historians and others in our own research, would indicate that it is absolutely true that Adolf lived in Liverpool.
The story is complicated by Liverpool novelist Beryl Bainbridge, who wrote a novel and then a TV play about it for the BBC. Both novel and play have helped blur the line between fact and fiction, further adding to the legend, which has taken on a life of its own in Liverpool. My next piece of key research was done down the pub. Peter Cavanagh's would have been the Hitler's local in Toxteth.
There's one story that Hitler was actually an Evertonian. You know, imagine that. Hitler was a blue.
One story I heard was that he applied to the art school to do a degree and got knocked back, basically.
There was a customer that was many, many years ago, because I've been here quite a long time, and he used to sit in the front snug and he used to tell me the stories about he turned around and said that he actually, Mr. Hitler, and actually came in the pub and sat in the seat in the front snug when he was visiting his family here in Liverpool. Now, that's whether it's a myth or a legend or the truth.
Is the seat
I
still
think
there?
it's the truth, absolutely.
So did Hitler walk the streets of Liverpool? Did he take a job at the Adelphi, as one legend suggests? And did he walk up Renshaw Street to St Luke's, decades before his own planes made it the famous bombed-out church? Not everyone is convinced by Bridget Hitler's memoirs. Professor Frank McDonough has written countless books on Adolf and the Third Reich. He's a Scouser, but also an historian.
She obviously thought of it as a way of making some money. I mean, he was at that time the most famous man in the world when she wrote it. And she probably would have written A Kiss and Tell now. But then it was like, can we come up with something juicy? She needed something to get some interest in Britain and in America. So she comes up with this manufactured story, Hitler came to Liverpool. And also we have to go back to Vienna and look at the evidence there. Hitler actually had to fill out a police registration form every year that he lived there. And he filled them out for a period from February 1910 to May 1914, and he gave a specific address, which was the Mann von Heim, which was a men's lodging house.
This was a lodging house he was living in.
Then we've got him also in this lodging house on a specific date, being seen by 2 eyewitnesses. That's strong evidence for him being in this other place, him being in Vienna. And also remember, he didn't have to just get out of Austria. He also had to get to one of the ports to come to Liverpool. So there's records from passenger lists from Hamburg, Mannheim or Rotterdam. Now he should show up on one of those if he came to Liverpool. There's no record of that. There's no record back. And Hitler rambled on as well in the Second World War. He sat around with his generals in the middle of the night and he rambled on about everything. And at no point does he ever say, Liverpool is getting bombed. I used to live there.
I know it well.
I know it well. The fiction is much more interesting, as you would know.
I'm depressed now.
Mike Unger has answers for all of the doubters. But one thing convinces him more than anything that the story is true.
I mean, there's lots of things in the memoirs that only a close member of the family could know. And if she was making it up to sell for money, which she wasn't, she would have embellished it far more than she did. The story is so trivial, so trite, so banal of him staying here. You couldn't make it up if you like.
So what became of everyone in this amazing tale? Alois went back to Germany in 1914, leaving Bridget to fend for herself with young William. They eventually sailed to America as war was breaking out in 1939. William had 4 sons, 3 are still alive and living in Long Island under a new surname. They all vowed never to have children, so the Hitler gene will die out. But one thing which won't die is this story. One of the regulars at Peter Kavanagh's has written a new play called Adolf in Toxteth, expected to be in keeping with the spirit of the legend.
Adolf Hitler lived at 102 Upper Stanhope Street, which is about 50 yards that way. There's a German church on the corner of Bedford Street South, which is about 50 yards that way. This pub lies right slap bang in the middle. Now, don't tell me he never called in for a half on his way home from church.
So this is it, this is the seat, this is Adolf Hitler's seat. It's a tall tale, but it's a Liverpool tale. And for me, anyway, until somebody produces irrefutable proof that he wasn't here, I think we're having it.
Well, that's all from me. Remember, you can watch again on the BBC iPlayer. I'm back next